Hi, I'm Gina, and today I'm going to be walking you through the Applied Notional project on learn.palantir.com. This is a great course to try out if you've completed some of the other modules on Palantir Learning and are looking to level up your skills, get some more practice, and really put it all together. To start, we'll begin with raw datasets, which we'll then clean up to get ready for the ontology. Then we'll put it all together into a workshop application, complete with writeback. Before we get started, a quick word from our founder.
Discover how Palantir customers unlock more value from Foundry and AIP thanks to our live instructor-led trainings. We are Ontologize, a group of former Palantir engineers who love teaching. We've trained thousands of Palantir users at leading organizations around the world. Unlock the full potential of your Palantir deployment by going to ontologize.com.
Starting from learn.palantir.com, make sure you're logged in. From here, we'll navigate to courses and navigate to the Applied Notional project. And make sure you're registered for it if you haven't already. Here, you'll find a course summary where you'll see that in our role, we are responsible for building a dashboard for a used car leasing company. Here, you'll see a couple of benefits that you might get out of this. Some suggested prerequisites. These are other courses on learn.palantir.com. And of course, some information about how to get help and provide feedback. Over here, you'll see a summary of the project, a couple of tips before getting started, as well as some high-level overviews of how the development process in Foundry works, and where you can find the documentation and some notes about AIP Assist. Next up, there's some description of the raw data. So we're going to have a dataset called car info. We'll have a dataset of historical maintenance logs, a dataset called model information, and then one more dataset called issues raw, which is going to contain the issues that we're going to be focusing on. Here, there are some notes about how to deal with it if you upload a dataset to Foundry and the schema is incorrectly inferred, so take note of that. So before we move on, let's go ahead and download all of these raw datasets by clicking the hyperlinks. Once you download the datasets, you'll navigate back to Foundry into the project that you have set up for either specifically this course or any sort of project that you're allowed to save resources in. Take note that you don't do this in your personal folder because certain functionalities won't be available to you there. So from here, let's hit New, make a new folder, and call this one Data. Click into it, and we'll hit New, and Upload File. Choose from Computer, and select the file that you just downloaded. Hit Open. And make sure you hit Upload as Structured Datasets. And hit Upload. So now let's take a look at each dataset and make sure the schema is just fine and see which columns we have. So in car info raw, right off the bat, we can see that we have a problem. The columns don't look like real column names. It looks like they just might be a row of data. To fix that, you're going to go to Edit Schema. We can see that row 5 is being treated as the column header, which is not correct. And so we'll change this to row 1. Now that looks much better. Now the column names look like proper column names. We have manufacturer date, name, manufacturer, owner first name, last name, and license. So we'll hit Save and Validate. Now that we have the correct column names, we can see that there are some issues. So manufacturer date is not a date, it's a string, and the formatting is off. The car name is a concatenation of the model and the car ID, so we're going to have to separate those out. Manufacturer probably shouldn't be all uppercase. First name looks fine, owner last name looks fine, and so does license. So now let's go back to data and have a look at the maintenance dataset. So here we can assume that every row here is a single maintenance visit for a single car on a specific date for a certain amount of time. The column names look correct. The types look correct, so there'll be less cleaning that we need to do here. Now let's look at issues. Right off the bat, we can see that there are some problems here. For starters, reported date is not a date. It's also not formatted correctly, so we're going to have to deal with that. Otherwise, not too many problems in these columns. We have an issue ID, issue title, issue description, car ID. This should be a foreign key for the cars dataset. But right now, it has a prefix, and so that's not going to work. Car component looks fine. Now, lastly, we have model information. And so here we have the make model ID, where we have the manufacturer and the model. We have the color, the fuel type, transmission, manufacturer country, manufacturer address, might want to change this to title case, and the manufacturer phone number. So now that we have a rough understanding of the data that we're working with in the column that we have, let's go take a look at the data cleaning requirements and also the app requirements to make sure that we're not missing anything. So back on the course page, let's take a look at Objective 1, data cleaning. So we can see that there are some expired issues. There are some date formatting problems, we notice those. Capitalization issues, we notice those too. Abbreviation. So for example, transmission, when it's coded as A or M, should be automatic and manual respectively. Foreign key issues, we notice those too. And ghost issues. So some issues aren't actually associated with cars and therefore should be removed. So those are some known issues. Now let's take a look ahead just to make sure that we're going to derive all the columns that we need in order to build our app. So take a look at Objective 2, Cars homepage. And let's look through these requirements. So for starters, we can see that in the filter bar, there's a requirement to be able to filter the cars by their historical maintenance count. So we might want to consider making that a property on the cars object. Now, in the key performance indicators, we can see that for the third, fourth, and fifth metrics, we're going to be segmenting the open issues by priority. And we don't have a priority column, so we're going to have to think about how to derive that. That's going to be given away in the next step. Now, in the table, we can see that we need a column called name. That should be an identifier for the car, and it should be manufacturer, model, car ID. We don't have that. We're going to create it. Last maintenance date, historical maintenance count, and average maintenance duration. Those are things that we should probably derive. License, we have. Owner name, we have the first name and the last name, but not a full name, so we'll have to create this one too. Chart is also going to require priority, so we definitely need that. Now, let's move on to Objective 3, Issues Inbox. So scrolling down, we can see that indeed we do need priority, which is about to be defined. We need status, about to be defined. So for priority, it looks like we're just going to use the car manufacturer to determine the priority of the issue, so we'll encode that somewhere in our pipeline. With status, you might have noticed that we don't have a status column on our data. We're going to be just adding a constant column in our pipeline. So given that there are quite a few data requirements here, I have put together a Notepad document that summarizes them to make sure that I can keep track of all of them and tick them off as I complete them to make sure I cover everything. So to sum it up, for issues, we fix the date, filter, fix capitalization, clean car, ID column, get rid of the ghost issues, join in the manufacturer name, and so on. And this follows similarly for every other data set that we're going to be looking at. So let's start with issues. So navigate back to your data folder, and then back to the root of your project. And from here, you're going to hit New, search for Pipeline Builder, and we're going to call this Car and Issues Cleaning Pipeline. We'll make it a batch pipeline and hit Create Pipeline. First things first, we're going to hit Add Foundry Data. So navigate to your data folder and click that plus sign next to each data set. Hit Add Data. And here we are, we have our raw data in Pipeline Builder. So as promised, let's start with the issues data set. So from here, you're going to click on that data set, go to Transform, and we're going to call this one Issues Cleaning. So first, we're going to have to deal with that date. So we're going to search for cast. And we'll be casting the reported date to a date, and now we have to specify the format. So the format is going to be year, underscore, month, underscore, day. And make sure you're overwriting the existing reported date column and hit apply. All right, and now we have a proper date column and it looks good. So next up, we're responsible for filtering out the so-called expired issues. So our next transformation is going to be a filter. So we're going to filter rows, and we're going to keep rows where reported date is on or after January 1st, 2020. So January 2020 and the 1st. And then we'll hit apply. So next up on our agenda is to clean the car ID column. So here we can see that we have a prefix here, car ID, and that's going to ruin this as a foreign key. So we have to get rid of it. So to do that, you're going to search for regex replace, and we will be cleaning up the car ID. The pattern that we're looking for is car-ID, and we're replacing it with nothing, so hit value. Just click in the text box, hit enter, and that will replace it with an empty string. Make sure that you're overwriting the existing car ID column instead of making a new column. And so next up, we have a few more steps that we're going to deal with, but we'll hold those off until later. So I'll just cross these out to show that we've done them. And next up, we're going to clean cars. So our first order of business is to derive model and car ID from the name. So let's take a look. Make sure you've applied all your changes and hit close. Starting from cars, you're going to hit transform and call this cars cleaning. And see here, we have the name is a concatenation of the model and the car ID. Those are probably both useful things, but not necessarily together, which is why we're going to split them out. So the transform that we're going to be using here is called string before delimiter, which will extract a string that happens before a specific delimiter. So the column that we're going to be dealing with is name. The delimiter is a dash. So that means we are grabbing the model. Then we'll name the output column model. So that's a new column. Hit apply. And we can see that that worked. So next up, we're going to extract the car ID. And so this time we're going to use string after delimiter. So the column is, again, name. The delimiter is a dash. And the output column should be called car ID. Hit apply. And now we've extracted information that we need to have. And so next up, we're going to make name a concatenation of the original name column and the manufacturer. But before we do this, take note that the manufacturer column is in all uppercase. So we're going to want to deal with that too. So we're actually going to first do title case. The column is going to be manufacturer, and we're going to be overwriting the original manufacturer column. Now hit apply. And now we'll do our concatenation. So we'll search for concatenate strings. The separator, we can just make this a space. And we'll be concatenating the manufacturer column with the name column and calling the output name. And now we have our clean manufacturer column and our name column. Now, next up, we have to handle this date. I didn't put it on the list, but we'll add it right now. Fix date. And so we're going to cast this to a date. So you'll search for cast. It's going to be the manufacturer date column. The type is date. The format for this one is going to be months, /day, /year. We'll be replacing the original column and then hit apply. And that looks great. So lastly, we're going to be concatenating the owner first name and the owner last name to get their full name. So we'll do another concatenation. The separator is a space, and we are concatenating first name and last name, and we'll call the output owner full name. Now hit apply. And there we have the owner full name. So we've cleaned up the cars data set. So let's go ahead and cross those out. And next we're going to move on to maintenance. So let's take a look at that one. We're going to have to aggregate by car ID with these specific aggregates and join to car. So taking a look at these historical maintenance logs, this in theory could be its own object that would allow us to get everything that we need to get done just fine. But it would also be just as easy to make it into a column on the cars dataset. So let's take that route instead. So we don't have to deal with any of the types here. The types are all correct. So from historical maintenance log, we're going to hit transform and call this maintenance add. And we're going to search for aggregate. We'll be aggregating on car ID. And the aggregations are going to be, well, one is going to be mean. And we'll be taking the mean of duration hours. So we'll call this average duration hours. New column here. Add an aggregate. And we're going to be taking the count to show the count of maintenance visits that each car has had. Now, lastly, we're going to be taking the max of the maintenance date to find the most recent maintenance for each car. So it'll be the max of maintenance date. We'll call this most recent maintenance date. And then we'll hit apply. And let's take a look at our data requirements. Looks like we're almost done here. We've done our aggregations. Our next step is just going to be to join to car. So let's go ahead and do that. So make sure you've applied this transformation and you're going to hit close. So from here, you're going to start with cars and then hit join. So that's going to be the left side of the join. And then for the right side, it's going to be maintenance add. Then you're going to hit start. So this is going to be a left join. We are augmenting the cars data set, adding in columns from the maintenance data set. The match condition is just going to be car ID is equal to car ID. And that is our join. Let's call this add maintenance to cars and hit apply. And we can validate that this worked. Make sure you've applied and hit close. So we can check that off our list. So now let's go deal with model. So we're going to have to recode transmission column as manual or automatic and make the manufacturer address title case. Let's do it. So starting with model information raw, you're going to click on it, go to transform, call this clean model. And you're going to search for case. And so we're going to say when transmission equals A, then the value should be automatic. Else, it should be a string with a value of manual. And this is going to live in the same column, so we'll replace this with transmission, which will overwrite the current transmission column. So hit apply. And it looked like that worked great. So lastly, we're going to clean up the manufacturer address. So you're going to search for title case. We're going to select manufacturer address. It's going to replace it and click apply. And now we've cleaned the model dataset. So what's next? Well, we're going to add this one onto cars. It doesn't really need to be its own ontology object, so we're just going to add it to cars. So you're going to close this. And we're going to do a join between clean model and this recent join between maintenance and cars. So this side is going to be the left side of the join. Click on it, go to join, hit clean model, that's the right side, and hit start. And so we'll call this add model to cars. So the match condition, we don't actually have a common key between these data sets. For the left side, we have manufacturer and model. And for the right side, we have make model ID, which is a concatenation of manufacturer and model. Good news is that we can deal with this by using an advanced join. So by using advanced match condition, we can actually derive the key that we're joining on. So we don't have to pre-process it before. So we're going to say rows where, and here this is going to be an expression. We're going to do a concatenate strings. The separator is a dash. The expressions are manufacturer and model. So we're going to say where the concatenation of manufacturer and model is equal to, the column is make model ID. And then we'll hit apply and make sure this worked. So we can see that this indeed worked and we are good to move on. So let's take a look at the rest of our requirements. We can check these off. For issues, we have to derive the priority column, which is going to rely on having the manufacturer name in. And we also have to insert a status column, and we have to get rid of the ghost issues. These two are related because in order to figure out which issues don't have cars, we have to join in cars. By joining in cars, we get the manufacturer name. Once we have the manufacturer name, we can derive priority. So let's go do our join. So starting from actually issues cleaning, you're going to click on that and then hit join. So that's the left side. On the right, we have add model to cars. And then you're going to hit start. So we're going to call this get rid of ghost issues. And this is going to be an inner join because for issues that don't have a match in the cars dataset, we want them gone. And so the match condition is just going to be car ID is equal to car ID. So these are all the columns that we're pulling in from the cars dataset. We almost certainly don't need all of them. We do need manufacturer. Let's also throw in model just because we can. And then we're going to hit apply and verify that this worked. All right, and it looks like that worked out okay. So we're going to hit close and move on to deriving our priority column and adding a status column. So from here, you're going to hit transform, call this add extra columns. And the way that we're going to derive our priority column is by a case statement, but we can also try out AIP generate for this one. So let's see how that works for us. So here we have instructions for deriving the priority column. Let's see what AIP generate can do with this. So you're going to hit generate. And we'll say derive a new column priority. So let's see how that works out for us. Hit generate. And mind you, what this is doing is it's not actually using an LLM to decide the priority of these issues. What it's doing is using an LLM to create pipeline builder transforms for us, which will then compute the priority using native pipeline builder functionality. And so here we can see that this made a case statement for us. And let's see how this worked out. So just scrolling through the results. At first glance, it seems like this worked out just fine for us. So we'll close this out. And then we're going to add our status column. Now, we don't really have a status yet. As far as we know, all of these issues are open or unresolved. And so we're going to be making a column that just has a constant in it. And it's just going to be unresolved for all of these issues. So you're going to search for add constant column. And it's just going to be unresolved for everything. And we'll call this status. And then hit apply. And then we'll close this out. Now, we're almost done here, but let's verify that issue ID is actually a primary key. So to do that, we'll hit the arrow in the preview and hit view stats. And we can see indeed that issue ID is not a primary key. So let's figure out what is making these rows not unique. So I'll click on 2 of them and hit keep values to show a preview of data just for those IDs. And here, I can see that they're just carbon copies of each other. There's nothing suspicious going on here. It really is just carbon copies. And so to get rid of this, we can just drop duplicates on issue ID. So we'll search for drop duplicates, and we can just put issue ID here too. And hit apply. And now let's verify that this worked. So we'll view stats. And we have 4,164 rows. And there are 4,164 unique values. So this is indeed a primary key now. We know this count is right because if we look in the directions, if you look at the car's homepage, you can see that there's supposed to be 4,164 total issues, which means we are doing well so far. So make sure you've applied, and then we'll close this out. So now that we've cleaned our data, we are ready to make our ontology outputs. So first, we'll make the issues ontology output. So you'll click on it, go to add output, new object type, and we'll call this Gina issue. Make sure to prefix this with your name because your colleagues might be doing the same project. I'll change the icon to an exclamation point and make the color lavender. And here you can see that the primary key is not the primary key that we want. We're going to change this to issue ID. So with the ellipses, set this as the primary key. And then for the title key, we'll make that issue title. Now next up, we're going to make cars an ontology output. So here, where we add model to cars, that is the latest state of our cars data. And so we'll click on it, hit add output. It's an object type. And we're going to call this one your name, car. And for an icon, we can make it a buggy, but there are a couple of other car-looking icons that you can use. And I will make mine lavender again. Now for the primary key, it should be the car ID, so we'll set this as the primary key. And then for the name, we'll make this the title property. And now we should be just about good to go. So we'll hit save and deploy. And then deploy. So now that we've successfully deployed our objects, we're going to need to make a couple of changes in the ontology so we can build the app that we need to build. So for starters, for example, we're going to need to build a link between cars and issues. Second, there's a couple of pieces of conditional formatting and numeric formatting that we should add to make sure that we can meet the requirements of the app. So from Pipeline Builder, you can hit Control-J and search for Ontology Manager and open that up. And so from here, you're going to go to New, Link Type, and we're going to be making a one-to-many relationship between cars and issues. So this is one-to-many because one car can have multiple issues, but every issue is only associated with one car. And so we'll make this one-to-many. And so on the one side, we have car. And then on the many side, we have issue. And so the foreign key here is going to be car ID. And so that looks good. Now, if we peek into the Objective 3 Issues Inbox page, we can see that we need some conditional formatting. So specifically, for priority, we're going to have conditional formatting, and for status, we're going to have conditional formatting. So for high, it's going to be red. For medium, it's going to be orange. Low is blue. For unresolved, we want the value to be orange, and for resolved, this should be green. So let's apply conditional formatting while we're here. Let's also apply some numeric rounding for the properties that are going to need it while we're here. So back in Ontology Manager, you're going to go to Object Types and search for your objects. You can probably find them by just searching your name. And so here I'll start with Issue. So I'll click into Issue and then navigate to Properties. And first I'm going to deal with Priority. So we're going to go to Display, add conditional formatting. And so we're going to be applying formatting. So if priority is exactly low, then the value is going to be blue. So I'll update that, and then I'll add a rule. So if priority is medium, I'll change this to orange. And then update that rule. Add another rule. If priority is exactly high, then it will be red. And update that. Now for status, it's going to be, again, orange if it's unresolved and green if it's resolved. So let's go do it. So navigate to status. And here we are in the Display tab. Add a rule. And so if the status is unresolved, then this will be orange. And then we'll add another rule. If the status is resolved, then the color is going to be green. And then hit Update Rule. Now, there's no numbers in this specific object type that are going to need value formatting. Well, let's take a look at cars. So in cars, the average hours in maintenance have way too many significant digits, so we're going to deal with that. So you'll navigate to Properties. And find average duration hours. Go to Display. Turn on numeric formatting. And make the maximum significant digits 1. And then we're going to save it. So now that we have created our link and applied some conditional formatting and value formatting, let's move on to building our app. So let's take a look at Objective 2, which is going to have the app requirements for the first page of the app that we're building. So this is what the app looks like. So here we can see that there are some requirements for how the widgets are laid out, and also where these high-level metrics are displayed, how the name looks, how you use tabs to control which page you're on. And so let's go build this basic layout first. So we'll navigate back to Foundry, and you're going to hit Control-J and search for Workshop. So you're going to click on Workshop, hit New Module. You're going to call this Car Operation Center, and then hit Save. And here we are in our empty workshop. So for our first order of business, we're going to make the title and the tabs. So in the example app that we're seeing, this isn't actually the module header. This is a header from a section. So let's build this out. So first, you're going to click on the header and toggle off Enable Module Header. Next up, we're going to trash this section right here. So just hit that garbage. And this is where our app is going to live. So let's change the style here to make this a page header. We'll give it an icon. We can use the buggy that we've been using. Maybe even give it a custom color. Can make it a similar shade of lavender that we've been using. And we're going to call this Car Operations Center. And now we're going to enable tabs. This is going to give us the tabs right below the title. So now that we've enabled tabs, you can see that we have tab 1 and tab 2. Let's give them names. So we're going to call this one Cars Homepage. And this other one, Issues Inbox. Now, you'll notice that in the example, we have little icons next to each one of these tabs. To do that, we're going to hit Hide Default Tabs here. And then we're actually going to put in a tabs widget and use that to flip between tabs so we can get a better visual. So here, you're going to hit that plus sign and search for tabs to get the tabs widget. And we're going to have 2 tabs. Tab 1 is going to be called Cars Homepage. We'll give it an icon. We can give it the buggy. And on click, we're going to add an event, and it's going to switch to the Cars homepage, which comes from the tabs layout from the section. And for tab 2, we're going to call this one Issues Inbox. And for the icon, we can give it an exclamation point. And on click, it's going to switch to the Issues Inbox. So you can't really tell because there's nothing here, but we are indeed switching tabs. So next up, let's lay out this app. So here we have this big section where we're going to put everything. And you're going to hit Set Layout and make this columns. So now we have 2 sections that are sharing the space horizontally. Now, we don't want any of these sections to be touching. So to do that, you're going to navigate to the parent section. So go to Layout. Go to Cars homepage. We're going to add a little padding. And so we're going to add regular padding here. And according to the example, this is where our filters are going to go. And on this other side, we have metrics, a table, and a chart. So let's lay out this right-hand side. So here, we're going to split this one up. So we're going to split section and say New Section Above. And this is where our metrics are going to go. Now, to add padding, you're going to go to the parent section here, turn on custom padding, and now you're going to leave the space between, so this space here at 16, but you're going to zero out the left-right padding and zero out the top-bottom padding. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to make the parent section borderless. And now we have these nicely spaced sections. So next up here, you're going to hit this section, flip the section into 2, new section on the right. And this is where our chart is going to live. And so again, we're going to hit this parent section. Going to add custom padding controls. Space between, we'll leave it at 16. Left, right, we'll zero it out. Top, bottom, we will zero it out as well. And then for the border style, we'll make it borderless. And now we have a rough skeleton for our application. And now that we have our layout here, we'll add in some widgets. The first widget that we're going to add are these metric cards at the top. So these are just showing the big picture of everything. So let's go ahead and add those in to start with. So up here in the upper corner, you're going to hit that plus sign, search for a metric card. We're going to add in a metric card with 2 metrics. In order to populate these metric cards, we're going to need data. And so to do that, we're going to create our first variables. So you're going to hit the Variables tab, hit that plus sign, go to Object Set, which we're going to define with an object set definition. And this one is going to be called Unfiltered Issues. And the starting object set is going to be your issues object type that you just created. Now, next up, we're going to create another object set. And this one is going to be Unfiltered Cars. And the starting object set here is going to be Cars. Again, this is your object type that you created earlier. Next up, we're going to aggregate these to get single metrics. So you're going to hit that plus again and go to numeric. It's going to be an object set aggregation. And we'll call this count of all cars. The object set is going to be unfiltered cars, and the aggregation method is the count. Next up, we'll do it again. So numeric, object set aggregation, count of all issues. The object set is going to be unfiltered issues, and the aggregation method is the count. So now that we have our numbers, let's go put them in. So navigate back to your metric card, and you're going to click into metric 1. We'll give it a name, count of all cars. And for the icon, we can give it a buggy. The value type is going to be a number, and the value itself is going to be count of all cars. Now we're going to go do the same for issues. So metric 2, the label is count of all issues. The icon is going to be our exclamation point or whatever you choose. It's going to be a number. And the number is going to be count of all issues. So that's our first metric card. Let's move on to configuring these other widgets. So in the example, we can see that we have a filter list. And the requirements are that we're able to filter by manufacturer, model, and historical maintenance count. So let's go do it. Starting from here, you're going to hit Add Widget, search for Filter List. The starting object set is going to be unfiltered cars. And now we're going to add our filter options. So you're going to hit Add Filter, and we're going to add manufacturer and model and count maintenance. And those are our filters. So notice that the filter output is stored in a variable called filter list 1 filter output. And I will rename this to just filter output to keep it simpler. So next up, we're going to have some key performance indicator. So we're going to have the total number of open issues for the filtered cars. And then we're going to have the total number of closed issues for the filtered cars. Third, fourth, and fifth metrics are going to be the total number of open issues segmented by priority. So in order to do this, we're going to have to make some new variables. So for starters, we'll need a filtered cars object set that responds to these filters. So you're going to hit that plus sign, go to object set. It's an object set definition. And we're going to call this one filtered cars. The starting object set is going to be car. And we're going to filter on a variable using filter output. And so now we have our filtered cars. But remember, the KPIs that we're going to display here have to do with the issues. So to do that, we're going to have to derive yet another object set that starts with the filtered cars and searches around to their linked issues. So we're going to hit that plus sign, object set definition, and we'll call this issues linked to filtered cars. The starting object set is going to be filtered cars. And we're going to traverse to issues. So now in order to start filling out our metrics, we're going to have to create a couple more subsets. So we're going to make a new variable. It's an object set definition. And this is going to be closed issues linked to filtered cars. It does help to be descriptive in our variable names. The starting object set is going to be issues linked to filtered cars. We filter on a property, and we're filtering for where the status is. We only have unresolved as an option, so we'll manually type in resolved for when we actually have resolved issues, which we don't right now. And then I'll try to save us a little time here by just duplicating this variable, renaming this one open issues linked to filtered cars. We're filtering for where status is unresolved. Here, we're using open and unresolved pretty interchangeably. Now, next up, we're going to make 3 more object sets. We're going to make the low priority issues, medium priority issues, and high priority issues. And let's double check, but these are going to be open issues. So to do that, We're going to create a new variable, object set definition, and this is going to be low priority open issues. The starting object set is going to be open issues linked to filtered cars. We're going to filter on a property. We're filtering for where priority is low. And to save ourselves some time, we'll just duplicate the variable. And this is going to be medium priority open issues. The priority is medium. We'll duplicate again. And this is going to be high priority open issues. Now priority is high. So that's enough object sets to get us through a couple of the next steps. So now let's go ahead and make some metrics again. And so we have 5 metrics to make. So we're going to go to the plus, numeric, it's an object set aggregation. And this is going to be count open issues. The object set is going to be open issues linked to filtered cars. The aggregation method is count. Let's do it again. Now we're going to look at count closed issues. So it's a numeric object set aggregation, count closed issues. The object set is going to be closed issues linked to filtered cars. The aggregation method is the count. And looks like we might have a mistake here because we most certainly do not have 4,000 closed issues. So let's just double check this variable. So closed issues, that's not correct. Closed issues should be resolved. There we go. That should be an empty object set. That is expected. We have not closed any issues. So now that is correct. And now we're going to count up the low, medium, and high priority issues. So we'll hit that plus, numeric, object set aggregation, count of low priority issue. The object set is going to be open issues linked to filtered cars. The object set is going to be low priority open issues. The aggregation method is the count. Now maybe we can save ourselves a little time by just duplicating this. Now we have count of medium priority issues. The starting object set is going to be medium priority open issues. Let's duplicate one more time, and then this is going to be the count of high priority open issues. And the starting object set is going to be high priority open issues. So now we have all of our numbers. Let's put them into our metric card. In order to put these numbers into our metric card, we have to have a metric card. So you're going to hit add widget, metric card. And we're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metrics. So metric 1, let's just make sure we get this right, is going to be total number of open issues. So metric 1, open issues, the value type is a number, and it's going to be count of open issues. So that's metric 1. Metric 2 is going to be count, call this closed issues, since we're working with limited real estate here. The value type is a number. So count of closed issues, that's 0, it's expected. Metric 3 is going to be low priority open issues. The value type is a number. The value is count of low priority issues. Metric 4, medium priority open issues. The value type is a number. So count of medium priority open issues. Metric 5, that's going to be high priority open issues. Value type number, value is count of high priority open issues. Now let's verify that this looks roughly like it's supposed to. Yep, and we can see the numbers look about right. So we've done the filter bar, we've done the metrics. Let's go ahead and give the metrics card a name like we have in the example. So we'll navigate back and call this key performance indicators. And now let's move on to making that table. So here we have a couple required columns for the table. So the first 3 columns are going to be name, number of issues, and last maintenance date. So in this space, you're going to hit Add Widget, search for Object Table. And now the object set for this object table is going to be filtered cars, which we already created. So we have filtered cars. And now it's just displaying the title key for the object type. So we can go ahead and rename this to name. So the next column is going to be count of issues. So you're going to hit Add Column. Now, instead of grabbing a normal property, you're going to go to Linked Objects and Aggregations. Click on Issue. Now, we're going to click into it, and instead of just displaying the title property, you're going to hit Aggregation on Property. The aggregation is going to be the count. And now we're showing the count of issues per car. So we'll rename this column to total issues. Now we're going to grab the most recent maintenance date. So add column. We'll grab one of these normal properties. So it's going to be most recent maintenance date. And let's see what's next. So we have number of issues, last maintenance date. Now we need historical maintenance count, average maintenance duration, license, and owner name. So we're going to grab count maintenance. We can rename this to historical maintenance count. And then we'll add average duration. And then we're going to add license. And then finally, the owner name. So we're going to grab the owner full name. And it looks like we have all of the columns that we need. So note that when the user clicks the row, we're going to want an overlay to appear. We're going to deal with that later. For now, we're going to handle the chart. So the chart is going to go in that empty section on the bottom right. And it should show the issue count segmented by priority. So in this open space, you're going to hit Add Widget, search for chart, XY chart. We're going to click into this layer here. We're going to be plotting an object set. Let's show the issues linked to filtered cars. And the x-axis property is going to be time. So we're going to get reported date. And the bucketing right now is year, which might be not as granular as we need. So let's change the bucketing to month. And now let's segment by priority. So you're going to select priority here. And now we have the issue count over time segmented by priority. Now we're a little bit pressed for space here. So let's adjust the sizing so that our chart isn't so squashed. So right now, the table and the chart are sharing space. And so if we look at the display configuration for the table, it's set to flux. And if we look at the display configuration for the chart, it is set to absolute. So let's change this to flux. And now they're sharing space equally. But maybe the table should have more room. So we'll click on the table, bump the flex up to 2. And now, as we get more screen real estate, the chart will grow as the screen does. So that concludes this part of the view. Now let's move on to the overlay. So again, the expected behavior is when you click on a row in the table, you get this overlay. So in order to have a behavior happen, we're going to have to create a new overlay. So you're going to go to the layout pane, hit that plus sign, hit new overlay, and now we have our overlay. So we'll deal with all the formatting later, but first, let's make sure that this opens when a user clicks something in the table. So we'll close out of this, click on the table, and scroll all the way down to selection. Note here first that the active object, or the row that the user is selecting, is captured in a variable called object_table1activeObject. To avoid confusion, let's rename this to selected car. And now this is where we'll add an event on object selection. So you're going to hit add event, open overlay 1, and now when we click on a row, it will open the overlay. So now let's deal with the formatting in this overlay. So we can see in the example that we have the title and a couple of other high-level details in line with the X sign that will allow us to close the overlay. This is not using the standard overlay header. So to fix this, let's go to the overlay configurations, toggle off show overlay header, then we'll click in here, delete this section, and then in this section here, we'll turn on the section header, and for the style, we'll use the header title. Now, for the icon, we can make it the buggy, like we've been using, or whatever you want. For the section name, that's going to be dynamic depending on which car we picked. But before we do that, let's make sure that we can close the overlay, because we got rid of our close button because that was in the header. So to do that, you're going to hit that plus sign here, search for button group, and we're going to have just one button with no text. The icon is close, and then we'll style this to make it look a little more minimal. So we'll make it text only. Now, what's this button doing? On click, it's doing an event, and the event is that it's going to close the overlay. So now that closes our overlay. So now let's deal with the title. The title is supposed to be the name of the selected car. So let's go make a variable for that. So you're going to navigate to the Variables tab, hit the plus sign. We're going to make a string variable that is an object property. The variable is going to be called name of selected car. The object set is going to be selected car from the table. And the object property is the name. Now we're going to navigate back to our overlay configuration. And the title is going to be a variable. So we'll hit use variable. It's going to be a string variable, name of selected car. And now we have a dynamic title. Next up in the example, we can see that we're displaying the color and the fuel type of the selected car. To display those, we'll need variables that capture that information. So you're going to hit that plus sign, string variable, object property, and we'll call this fuel type of selected car. The object set is going to be selected car. The object property is going to be fuel type. Now one more time for color. So string, object property, color of selected car. The object set is going to be selected car. The property is color. And now we're going to add a little metric card in the top here. So you're going to hit that plus sign. And we're going to add in a metric card. Add in two metrics here. So one metric is going to be the fuel type. And the value type this time is a string. The value is going to be fuel type of selected car. And then for the other metric, it's going to be color. And the value type is a string, and it's going to be the color of the selected car. Now, to make these smaller, we can make these a tag style. First, we can make them side by side, and we can make this tag so it's a little more compact. Now, we probably have more height than we need to have here, so let's make this a little shorter. So right now, this is 150 pixels. So let's change this to be about 100. And now let's fill out our overlay. So first, we're going to display the car information, and this is a metric card here, so let's go do that. But first, take note that none of the sections within this overlay are touching each other. So we're going to put in padding, just like we did before. But first, let's change the background color of this section. So we'll change the background color to light gray. And let's set the layout to be rows. Note that we're going to need padding here again, so we're going to make regular padding. And then let's configure each section individually. So we'll click into this section, change the border style to outer drop shadow so it looks like it's a little elevated. We're going to turn on the section header and change the header format to floating. And so that's how that looks. Now, we don't really have enough space here, so let's turn this into flex. And now it's going to share space equally with the one below it. And so we're going to name this section car information. And in here, we're going to put a metric card. So you're going to search for metric card. And we're going to be putting 3 side-by-side metrics. Now, right off the bat, I can see that this section has more space than it needs. So I'm going to bump up the flex of the one below it. That's better. So in this metric card, we're going to be displaying the manufacturer, the model, and the transmission, each with a little icon. And so those are more variables that we're going to have to create. So you're going to navigate to variables, hit that plus sign. It's a string, object property, and this is going to be manufacturer. We're starting from, of course, selected car. The object property is manufacturer. Next up, we're going to grab the model. So again, string variable, object property, model of selected car. The object set is going to be selected car, of course. The object property is model. Lastly, we have to grab the transmission. So plus, string, object property, transmission of selected car. Starting with selected car, the object property is the transmission. So let's put this into our metric card. So for metric 1, the label is going to be manufacturer. In the example, the icon is a little hammer, which I like. So it's a little hammer here. The value type is a string. The value is manufacturer. Metric 2, this one's going to show the model. Now for the icon, I can use a car or the buggy that I've been using. Maybe I'll use a car this time. The value type is a string. The value is model of selected car, the Corvette. Next up, our third metric is going to be the transmission. The value type is a string. The specific value is transmission of selected car. Now let's go back and play with the formatting a little bit for the whole metric card. So first of all, we can change the icon style to being prominent. And for the metric side, let's make these a little more compact. Let's also make sure that we have an icon for transmission. So for transmission, we'll put a little gear. And lastly, let's fiddle with the styling to get rid of these outlines. And we'll probably choose minimal instead of prominent for the icons. The prominent ones are a little too big. So now to get rid of these borders to make us look a little cleaner, we're going to go to display, make sure the background color is transparent, set the elevation to borderless, And now we still have a little extra stuff going on here. And so to fix it, we'll change the row height to auto. I know we set that as flex, but we're going to change it to auto so that we're not displaying anything extra. And now we have our first metric card configured. So next up, we're going to be displaying the additional manufacturing information. This is going to be a property list. So here we're displaying the manufacturer date, manufacturer country, manufacturer address, and manufacturer phone number. So here we're going to hit add widget, search for property list. And the input object set here is going to be selected car. And now we're going to add properties. So we have the manufacturer date, the manufacturer country, the address, and the phone number. We have 2 columns here, which looks about right. And we'll stack these so it looks a little better. We have a little more room that way. And now I'm going to need to add a header on here. So I'm going to hit add header. I'll change the row height to auto, since that worked for the metric card. And for the header format, I'll make this floating. And for the border style, I'll make the outer drop shadow. So we'll give us a section name. This is called additional manufacturing information. Next up, we're going to add another one of these, but this time about owner and history. So we'll add a section. We'll make sure we turn on the section header. It's going to be floating. The border style is outer drop shadow. We'll set the row height to auto. And we're going to hit add widget. It's going to be, once again, a property list. The input object set is selected car. And again, we'll be stacking this layout. So for the properties, we're going to add owner name, count maintenance, last maintenance date, so most recent maintenance date, license, and average maintenance duration. Notice how in the example, they display average duration hours with actually the hours unit. So see here. So the way that we can do that is from the average duration hours property, we can hit configure, which will take us to Ontology Manager. And then we can navigate to properties, average duration hours. Under display, we'll go from standard to custom unit and change this to hour. And then hit save. And now you can see that updated immediately in our workshop. So before we move on, let's make sure we give this a name. So this section should be called owner and history. And that looks about right. Now, lastly, we're going to display an issue list for this specific car. So in the issue list, we're going to first be displaying the count of open issues and closed issues. And then we're going to show all the issues that are related to this car. And it's going to display the name, the status, the car component, and the issue description. So let's go make it. So here, once again, we're going to turn on the header in this last section, make it floating, change the border style. Let's also change the row height to auto. So we're going to add a widget. It's going to be an object table. The object set should be the issues that are related to this specific car, but we don't have that variable yet. So here, you're going to hit new object set variable, and we're going to say issues linked to selected car. So the starting object set is going to be selected car, and we are getting linked objects and grabbing all of the issues for the selected car. And so here, we're displaying the issue title. Let's rename this column to name. And then we're going to display the status. And see it has that nice coloring from the ontology. We're going to display the car component. and then the issue description. Let's delete that. And so those are the columns that we need to have, but we are missing the metrics in the header, and also we haven't renamed this. So we're going to name this issue list. And we're meant to put a metric card here in the header that describes the number of open issues and the number of closed issues for this specific card. And we're going to need a new variable for that. So you're going to hit the plus, go to new object set definition, and this is going to be closed issues linked to selected car. And so our starting object set is going to be issues linked to selected car, and we're going to be filtering for where status is resolved. Remember, we don't have any of those. And then we're going to make another one. So object set definition. We're going to call this one open issues linked to selected car. The starting object set is going to be issues linked to selected car, and we're going to be filtering on a property for where status is unresolved. And now we're going to aggregate those. So new variable, numeric, object set aggregation, count of open issues linked to selected car. The object set is going to be open issues linked to selected car, and the aggregation method is the count. And to save ourselves some time, we'll duplicate this. So count of closed issues linked to selected car. So we're starting with closed issues linked to selected car. Again, there are none. The aggregation is a count. And now let's make the metric cards. So you're going to hit that plus sign. Search for metric card. Our first metric is going to be number open issues. The value type is a number. The value is count open issues linked to selected car. Now we're going to go back and we're going to add a metric 2. The label here is going to be number of closed issues. The value type is a number. The value is count closed issues linked to selected car. Now these are pretty big, and so we're going to change the style, first of all, to be side by side, and second of all, to be tag style. And now this is looking a little bit squashed, but when we go into view mode, you'll see that everything actually does have enough space. So now we are done with our overlay, and we're ready to move on to the next step. So in our next step, we're going to be building the issues inbox. So in Objective 3, we can find the instructions for constructing the issues inbox. So in the issues inbox, we have a filter and then we have resulting table. So first, we'll lay out the app and then we'll build the filter bar. Let's first lay out the app. So we'll close the overlay and then go to issues inbox where we have nothing going on yet. So here, we're going to hit set layout and it's going to be columns. So this is where our filter is going to go, and this is where our table is going to go. So next, we're going to set the padding here to be regular, since again, we don't want any of these sections to touch. So now that this is split up, let's go take a look at what filters we need. So for the filter bar, we're going to have car component, issue title, but for the issue title, we're going to do a multi-select dropdown instead of a histogram. So let's go do that. So we're going to hit add widget. It's going to be a filter list. And to back this filter list, we can use the unfiltered issues that we had from before. So unfiltered issues. And we're going to add filters. So we have car component. And then we're going to add the issue title. And right now this is a histogram, but instead of a histogram, we're going to change this to a multi-select dropdown. Next, we want to be able to search the issues in a search bar. We want to filter based on priority. And we also want to filter based on status. So for search bar, we'll hit add filter, hit keyword search, and then add filter to add priority. And then we'll finally add status. Next up, we're going to add the table. So here we have a table that is going to be filtered by the filter list, which also has some metrics in the header. So let's go ahead and make this table, and then we'll come back here to make sure that we have the right properties. So here, you're going to hit add widget. It's going to be a table, object table. So the object set, we don't actually have it yet. So we're going to be making a new object set variable. Before we actually do this, let's rename the filter output from the filter list so we don't get confused. So let's call this output from issues filter to distinguish it from the last one. Now back in here, let's configure our object set. So click back into here, and we're going to call this filtered issues. The starting object set is going to be issue, and we're going to be filtering using a variable using output from issues filter. And so there we have our table. And so the properties that we're going to be added are issue title, car component, issue description. Let's go add them. Issue title, component, and then we're going to add description. And next up, we're going to add reported date and priority. Reported date, priority, and then status. And now here we have our table. We're supposed to have metrics in the header, but it looks like this table is not actually in a section. And so to fix this, I'll hit add header. And I'm not going to actually have a title here. I'm just going to put the metric cards in this header. And so I'm going to hit that plus sign and hit metric card. And so in this metric card, we're going to say you're seeing X number out of Y number of total issues. And so to do that, we're going to make a metric that has a secondary metric. So we're going to click into metric. And the label is going to be issues shown. It's going to be a number. Now wait, we don't have this yet. The goal is to show the count of the issues being displayed. And so we're going to make this. So we're going to go to variables, hit that plus sign. It's a numeric, object set aggregation, count of filtered issues. The object set is going to be filtered issues. The aggregation method is the count. So the value type is going to be a number, and it's going to be the count of filtered issues. And here we're going to show a secondary metric. So secondary metric, it's going to be blank of. And so here we're able to concatenate text with the value of the secondary metric. For the secondary metric, we're going to use a variable that we already have, count. We're going to make sure this is a number, not a string. The secondary metric value is going to be count of all issues. And so now when I filter this, it will say, oh, you're seeing 1,900 out of 4,000 total issues. So next up, let's amend this metric card to make it more compact. So we can make it side by side. Make it list style. That's a little more minimal. There we go. And so there is our table, and it responds to our filters. So what's next? We've configured the table. We've configured the metrics in the header. And now, just like we had last time, we're going to have this more detailed view where we can click on a row and see some details. And so the goal here is that when a user selects an issue from the table, we're going to have a selected issue section appear on the right that has more information about the selected issue and actions that you can take. So this is going to be a hidden section, meaning it's not going to show up until we select an issue. So let's go ahead and make this conditionally visible section. So over here, we're going to have a new section on the right, and we're going to click into it to configure some things about it. First of all, we'll make sure it has a section header. Now for this one, we only want to show this section if there is a row selected in the table. Before we do anything here, let's make sure that the output from this table is actually named. So we'll click into the table, scroll down to selection, and we'll rename this to selected issue, just to avoid confusing ourselves. Now let's return to the section. So we're going to turn on conditional visibility so that this section doesn't show if there is no row selected. So we're going to put in a Boolean variable that evaluates if there is a row selected from the table. So you're going to hit select Boolean variable, make a new Boolean variable derived by variable transformation. So here, we're going to be evaluating if an object set is empty. So we'll hit the isEmpty from the object set transforms. And we'll be checking if selected issue is empty. Obviously, it's false right now because there is a selected issue. So that means that this is always going to show. But what we can do is go to the table and turn off enable auto selection. That means that there is not necessarily a row being selected. So by turning off enable auto selection, that means when a user comes in here, they're going to not see this section here. So let's demonstrate that. Make sure you're saved, and then we can go into view mode. This takes us to our home page. Now if we navigate to the issues inbox, notice that we're not seeing that section here. But if we click on a row, we'll get this section. Now there's nothing to see there yet, but we'll fill it out. So now go back to edit mode. Go back to the issues inbox and click on a row to show the section. So now you're going to click into the section and we're going to give it a proper section header. So we'll give the section an icon. The icon will be an exclamation point that we've been using. So now we have to give the section a name, but the section should change dynamically with whatever row we select. And in the instructions, we can see that the name of the section should be a concatenation of the reported date and the issue title. Let's go ahead and make that happen. So to do this, we're going to hit new variable. It's going to be a string, and it's going to be a variable transformation, specifically a string concatenation. So we're going to be concatenating the issue reported date and the title of the selected issue. So to do that, we're going to hit that /, make a reference, and the reference is going to be an object property. And so the object property is going to be starting with selected issue, and the property is going to be the reported date. So here we have the date, and let's add a dash between these two, type another /, and we're going to make another reference. This reference is going to be an object property, and the object property is again going to be derived from selected issue. The specific property is going to be the issue title. And there we go, we have our title. So let's call this a section title. And now we're going to go navigate back to our section and change the title. Select the string variable and select our section title. And now we have a title that will update dynamically depending on which row we pick. Now, if we want to re-hide this section, we should have a button that allows us to do that. So we're going to make a close button. So you're going to hit this plus sign over here, search for a button group, and then we're going to configure this button. It's not going to have any text, only an icon, and the icon is going to be close. On event, what we're going to do is reset the value of the selected object from the table, which is going to make the object set empty, and therefore this will be closed. So we're going to search for reset here, and we're going to be reset selected issue. And so if I click this, it's going to empty out the selected issue variable, which means the section will be closed again. And then to open it back up, I'll just click anything. I also might want to style this button a little differently just for continuity. So I'll make this a text only, so it's a little more minimal. So now let's fill out this section. So the next thing that we're going to put here are two buttons. The buttons are update priority and update issue status. So those buttons are going to trigger actions. We don't have any actions yet, so we're going to have to go build them. So specifically, we're going to have one button to change the priority of an issue and one button to change the status of the issue. And specifically, the pop-up should have specific options. For status, it's going to be unresolved and resolved. And for priority, it's going to be high, medium, and low. So let's go make these actions. Make sure you've saved your work. And we're going to navigate to Ontology Manager. So open up Ontology Manager in a new tab. And from Ontology Manager, you might have to make a new branch first. You're going to go to New, Action Type, and we're going to be executing actions on Issue. So choose your issue. But this is grayed out. The reason why this is grayed out is because we have not enabled edit on our issues. So let's go do that now. So close this out, go to Object Types, find your issue object type, go to the Data Sources tab, and toggle on Allow Edits. And now we can go make our actions. So go to New, Action Type. The object type is issue, and now we can select it. And we're going to be doing a modify. And then we'll hit Next. So what are we modifying? Well, this one is only going to modify the priority. So we're going to hit Next. So prefix this with your name in case others are doing the same project. So Gina, modify, issue, priority. And then hit Next. And I will be allowing everybody in my organization to carry this out. And then hit Create. Now we're almost done with this specific action. The rules, that's correct. It's just modifying the priority. The form, however, I can type in whatever priority I want here, which is certainly not ideal. So to fix this, I'm going to hit the priority field and change this from user input to multiple choice. I'll define the options manually because there's just a couple of them. The options are going to be high, medium, and low. Okay, and that is our first action. Now let's go make another one. So straight from here, you're going to hit New, Action Type. And we're going to call this one, again, prefix it with your name, Modify Issue Status. For the rules, so we're going to add a new rule. We're going to be modifying objects. The object type that we're modifying is issue. The property that we're modifying is the status. And that's it. Now for the form, again, right now I can type in any status I want, probably not ideal. And so I'm going to click into status and change this from a user input to multiple choice. where the options are either resolved or unresolved, and that's it. And now I have to specify some security and submission criteria. Notice that in this view, I have a slightly different interface than I had when I was setting up the last action. So here, I'm going to have to add some submission criteria. So I'm going to add a condition. So we're going to check if the current user's groups include, and I'll choose a group, choose Ontologize trainers. And now I should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and save my actions. And now we have our actions. So let's put them in our section. So back here in Workshop, we're going to hit Add Widget and search for button group. And we're going to be making 2 buttons. So the first button is going to be our update priority. For the intent, for the color, let's make this yellow. So that's going to be warning. We'll give it an icon, maybe the exclamation point. And on event, or on click, it's going to trigger an action. The specific action is going to be the one that we just made, the modify issue priority. Now, what's the problem here? When we click on this, it lets us choose just any issue, which is not what we want. The issue should be the selected row by default. And so here, we're going to hit parameter defaults and set a default for issue. We'll be using a local default value, which means it's inheriting a value from Workshop. So the variable is going to be selected issue. And in the form, it's going to be visible but disabled, so our users can't change it. And now I'm going to go ahead and configure button 2. So I'm going to call this one update status. The intent will make it blue, which is primary. And for the icon, we'll use the update icon. And on click, it's going to be an action. The action is going to be the modify issue status. And for a parameter default, we're going to set up the default for issue. And once again, we're going to be setting it to the selected issue. And in the form, it's going to be visible but disabled. All right. So now we have our buttons. So our next step here is going to be to display some issues about the detail. So below the buttons, we're going to have some issue details, where we want to see the issue title and the description, a couple of additional properties, car component and reported date, and also properties from the car, so name, owner name, and license. So let's go do it. Now, it doesn't explicitly say to do it, but in the example, we have a metric card that shows the priority and the status below the buttons. So let's just put those in as well. Let's do that first. So below our buttons, we're going to add a new section below, add a widget, and it's going to be a metric card. And so we're going to have 2 metrics here. One is going to be the priority of the selected issue and the status of the selected issue. We're going to need new variables. So you're going to go to variables, hit the plus sign. It's going to be a string, an object property, and we'll call this priority of selected issue. The starting object set is going to be selected issue. The object property is going to be priority. Now, similarly, we're going to do the same thing, but for status. So plus, string, object property, status of selected issue. The object set, we're going to start with selected issue. The object property is going to be status. So we're going to display these in our metric card. So metric 1 We're going to call this one priority. The value type is a string. The value itself is going to be priority of selected issue. And then the other metric is going to be the status. And so for the value, we're going to select status of selected issue. Let's give it a label. Status. And an icon. So maybe an information sign. And then let's give one for priority. Icon, I'll use the exclamation point that I've been using. Not that we could do some conditional formatting here. We're not going to for today. But you could by just changing the text color to dynamic. So next up, let's add the issue details. So first, we're going to add a section below. And we're going to add a property list. So here's our property list. And the input object set is going to be the selected issue. And our properties are going to be issue description, issue title, and let's change the number of columns to 1, enable value wrapping, and let's also stack these. Let's also put a header on here, and so we'll call this issue details. And then we're just going to change the header to contained for styling. Next, we're going to show a couple more details about the issue. So we're going to add another section below, and we're going to add another property list. And the input object set be selected issue. And so we're going to add the component and the date it was reported. We'll enable value wrapping. And now let's add some other details here from actually the car object. And so we're going to hit add value, add properties from linked objects, and hit car. And so this is just going to show us the title key for the car. So we can add more properties related to the car. So we hit add value and go to car. And click into this one. And instead of showing the title, we're going to display the owner name. And then we're going to add another property. So again, on car. And now we will add the license. So linked object property, the property is the license. Now let's give this a little bit more space by stacking the labels and the values. Now, in the very last step, we're going to add a button so that when we click it, we go back to the overlay that is available in the car's inbox. So let's make that happen. So back in the issues inbox, we're going to add a section below. We're going to add a widget. It's going to be a button. And this button is going to be called View Associated Car. And we'll give this an icon that suggests that it's going to open another page. And on click, we're going to have an event happen. So the event is that we're going to open overlay 1. So when we click this, we get the car details. Now let's tweak the formatting a little bit. So we'll make it fill all the available space. Make it large. And there we go. So to summarize what we've done so far, we started all the way back in Pipeline Builder, where we took 4 raw datasets, cleaned them, and made them into ontology objects. Then we did a little bit of extra configuration in the ontology. Finally, we ended up in Workshop, where we built this app, where we have a car's homepage that shows the cars available in our organization, where we're able to filter them and see these KPIs on top and a chart, where we can also see these details about specific cars. And then we built this issues inbox to manage issues related to the cars. We built a section that only shows up if you're clicking a row. We embedded some actions into this section to make the workflow operational so you can augment your underlying data. And then we put it all together by linking back to this view where we can see these car details. Make sure you save and publish your work. And you can pop into view mode to fully appreciate the workshop. This concludes our tutorial. Thanks for watching, and we hope you found it helpful. Be sure to let us know in the comments which tutorials you want to see next.